Good evening. This week's parsha is Parshas Lecha, and there is a famous question which is posed. The Medrash asks, why is it that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not tell Avram where he was going? He said, Lecha, go out. He was 75 years old. And he said, leave where you live. You grew up. It's the Moladetecha, mi Bais Avicha. This is your home. Leave. But he never said to him where he was going. And there's a few terutzim, and one I want to share with you is that when a person is told, if he would have been told where he's going, then it would have made the steps he took to get to Eretz Yisrael, it would have been a hechsher mitzvah. We know that there's such a thing as doing a mitzvah, but there's such a thing also as the preparation, which there's different type of rewards for the preparation. A person in this world, every movement that they make, if it's l'shem shamayim, it increases the value and the shine of the actual action. And getting to the place is part and parcel of that. So if you would have said, you're going to Eretz Yisrael, leave your house and go to Eretz Yisrael, the whole trip going to Eretz Yisrael would not have been schar. It would have been hechsher mitzvah, the preparation and the dealing, which is a lower type of a schus. And it would have brought him to Eretz Yisrael, which would have been the destination and the mitzvah, because he was told to go there. But because he wasn't told, he was just told, leave your house and start going. That in and of itself, every step became a mitzvah. Because he didn't know the destination of the mitzvah itself, of going to Eretz Yisrael. So it was like a double-headed schus. There was the traveling, wilderness, not knowing where am I going, where am I supposed to end up, where does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want me to be? So every step was turned into a schus and a mitzvah. Now, we know that the name of Avram and Sarah were both changed, and each one effectuated, that means a hey was added to the name of Avram, to Avraham, and Sarah went from Sarai to Sarah. And as the Arizal explains, that there is certain shefa, a compartment that floods people who are zoiche, to be flooded with shefa, with good flowing, bracha, mazel, everything else. And it comes under, because the letters all have an effect in different ways for this world. And the letter Hey is a way of getting the biggest flow from that designated world in heaven. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu added to his name Avraham, the Hey, and to Sarai, Hey, they could have added a different name or a different letter. It opened up the tzinoros, all of the pipelines of flow from that world. So says the Arizal. Now, if you look in Rashi, Rashi says there, until now, it was HaKadosh Baruch Hu who gave the bracha, and it could not begin the process of getting the bracha from this world, from even tzaddikim. But once the names were changed, Hey and the Hey, that he gave over to tzaddikim, the ability to give brachas and for it to happen, so much so that the Gemara says that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to do something and a real tzaddik decides otherwise, the Gemara says beferish, tzaddikim goyzrim v'HaKadosh Baruch Hu mekayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu goyzer and tzaddikim are mevatel. So if a person is destined, lo aleinu, lo aleichem, not to have children, and the tzaddik wants that person to have the children, so even, so to speak, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is against it in his master plan, he'll change, he'll step aside. The Gemara says it, beferish. So it shows you the power of tzaddikim. Somebody just told me of, in Reb Shner Kotler, Zichrono Livracha's family, that a whole story, and they knew that the husband was dying, and the wife said that even if I know that his days are limited, he's such a tzaddik and a Talmud Chacham, I want to be married to him. And Reb Moshe Feinstein, they went for a bracha, and Reb Moshe said to them that they're going to have children. And Lemaisa, they had 2 sons. And Reb Moshe was the Mesader Kedusha. Now that wasn't the case that she couldn't have children, but it was because she was accepting such a thing, and she had 2 children because she had a boy, and they remembered that the Rosh Yeshiva said children, not a child. And they went back to him, and she had a 2nd son. That's the Bechina, all the Rebbes who are Tahirim and Kedoshim, that they have the power to control. It's sometimes at a price. In other words, if they see there's real opposition in heaven, they risk their own lives. That means they could do it, and they'll be listened to, but then there's a gang, Lemaisa, who piles on, look what he's doing, he's changing Bria, and he risks himself, and he knows it. But he makes a cheshbon if he wants to do it or not to do it. And then there's Rachmanis from Shemayim, that they pity on him because of what he did, not that he should be hurt. But that came from the 2 Hays, the Sarah and the Avraham. Now, Meforshim ask, why are the first 2 words, it's not the first 2 words, it's Vayomer Hashem el Avram, Lech Lecha. Why couldn't it have just said Lech? Go. Say, go out. 1 word. What's the Lecha? Because in every person's life, they have to bring out what really their tchunas hanefesh, the power and potential of what they are capable of accomplishing in their lifetime. Avram Avinu wasn't just told to go out because of the weather or because of Lech, Lecha. You're going out for yourself. You're going to you. Because when you will end up, which like I said before, he didn't know he was going to Eretz Yisrael, but he ended up in Eretz Yisrael, that opened up every vista and panorama of opportunity for him to be able to be effective. Now we know that Yaakov Avinu was the biggest of the three. That's why he had the Shivtei Kah. Avram Avinu had Yishmael and Yitzchak had Esav, so they could not have the Shivtei Kah. And the Gemara says that the Bechir Sheba Avos, like the most chosen one, was Yaakov Avinu. But with everything, the Yesod, the foundation, that means we many times in a building, we don't see the foundation. It may be 50 feet under the ground. But that gorgeous building, the edifice, cannot even be seen or appreciated and wouldn't be without its foundation. And true that it flourished and it became a Yitzchak and then a Yaakov Avinu, but the Yesod was Avram Avinu, who was the stronghold and the cementing factor of the future generations, his son, his grandson, and all the Shiftei Kah, and all of Klal Yisrael stand on his shoulders, because it says the Lech Lecha, that the way he went out and did it, and many Rishonim debate of the 10 nisyonos that Avram Avinu lived through to produce and to become the true Eved Neman of the Rabbanu Shalom, that he lived through and succeeded in passing each and every test. There's a big question, is Lech Lecha, which was a test, will he do it or won't he, the first or the second? So many hold Kazdim. You know, we spoke last week about this Nimrod who became Nebuchadnezzar. He was a Gilgal, says the Arizal, and that, as I told you, his name began with a Nun, Nimrod, Nun, and ended with a Dalet, and so did Nebuchadnezzar's name begin with a Nun and end with a Dalet. Netzar only means leader, king, czar. It's a title. But the actual name was beginning with a Nun and ending with a Dalet because he was a Gilgal from Nimrod. And as I told you last week, what they wanted to do and what they wanted to accomplish, and Daniel came and destroyed that Avodah Zarah. So the point being that Avram Avinu, and many hold it was really Kazdim, because it's Nimrod threw Avram Avinu into the Kivshon Ha'esh, and it was a test, because who wants to stand in front of a fiery furnace and be told, you know, either you're doing this or that, or you're being thrown in? And he said, fine, throw me in. And he did, and he walked out unscathed. So these things mold and shape the panorama, the picturesque dynamics of Avram coming in. He was born in 1948, not the English year, our 1948. That means starting with Bereshis, Adam Arishon was year 1. 1948 years later, he was born and lived for 175 years. And here in his 75th year, already an old man, because let's not forget that in the times of Adam and Shais and all, people lived 900, that was the regular life expectancy. It wasn't something unusual. But after the Mabul, it shrunk down to 100, 120, 150. And Avram Avinu indeed lived the 175 years, 100 of those years in Eretz Yisrael. Now, Avram Avinu, a lot happened in Lech Lecha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him he's going to come out and he's going to have a great nation. So he answered and said, the only one that I have is Eliezer. He's my faithful servant. And he was called Damesek Eliezer, and the Gemara darshans from that word Damesek, that he was Doilo Mashke Mitoras Rabo L'Rabim, La'acherim, that he learned so much Torah from Avram Avinu, and he went around disseminating, giving the drushes of the Divrei Torah of Avram Avinu. But when Hashem promised him future, he answered and said, all I have is Eliezer. He's my faithful butler, servant, but I have no children. So Hashem told him to go outside, and he said, look at the stars. So he said, Ko yihi zarecha, that like there are so many multitudes of stars, that he said, Ko zarecha, and so will be your children. Some of Farshim say that when he said ko, the word ko, so will be your future doros, that the word ko is Begematria 25, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to him that there are 25 letters in Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, that in the schus, that your children are going to say Shema Baboker Ba'erev, in the morning and in the night, and be Makabel Ol Malchus Shemayim. That's going to be your schus, the ko. From those 25 letters, Yi Zarecha, you're going to have overflowing doros of children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. But Avram Avinu answered, and we know how important Shema is, I've said it to you on occasion, that the diaraisa of the morning and the diaraisa of the evening is Shema. That means Shemona Esrei is the Olam Atzilus. It's a higher world than the Kriya Shema, and it's brachos, that's the Olam Habriya. But then we go up to Shemona Esrei, that's the highest, that's Silos. But it's still D'Rabbanan. But saying in the proper time, morning and night, Shema Yisrael and be Makabel, Ol Malchus Shamayim, that is enough to be Yoitza the Diaraisa of Kriya Shema Ba'erev U'Baboker. But Avram Avinu answered Hashem and said, I can't have children. I was born in the mazel of the east. And you can't have children if you're born under that mazel. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, took him outside. Vayotze osa achutza was to show him the stars. But the Medrash says and the Kabbalah Swarm expand on how it actually happened, that when he took him out, means Vayotze Osa Achutza, he took him out from the mazel that he was under, and he was put under a new mazel, that he was able to have children. And that really brings me to say to you that the Gemara has a big shaila whether there is mazel for Klal Yisrael or not. Rashi right away says in that Gemara that it's not a question if we have mazel or not. And that's why at every chasna we wish mazel, the mazel should be good for the person. Mazel tov, mazel tov. But what is the question of the Gemara? The question is whether a person can change his mazel. That's the question. One Mandi Amar holds that once you're born under a mazel, that's how you remain. A person sees sometimes in his lifetime, is geitnisht. Not with his children, or with a business, or with what is geitnisht, that he doesn't feel there's mazel protecting him and directing him in his lifetime. Another Gemara, the other Mandi Amar holds that you could change your mazel al yedei tefillah, that through the Mefarshim, the Marsha, all of them discuss this, that davening is unbelievably high, and that's why I told you that a shidduch, the Shulchan Aruch says, that if someone gets engaged on Tisha B'Av, they should say Mazel Tov and seal the shidduch. So all the Mefarshim and the Shulchan Aruch says Shemi Yikadmenu Acher, because maybe somebody will steal away the shidduch. And the Mefarshim ask, Tisha B'Av, is that a day to say Mazel Tov? It's a day of Avelis. So the Shulchan Aruch answers, Shemi Yikadmenu Acher, because maybe they're going to lose the shidduch. So if that's it, say the Mazel Tov. So the Yerushalmi asks, but how could it be? Arboim Yom Kodem Yitziras Havlad Machrizim Bas Ploni Leploni. That 40 days before a child is even conceived, they call out in heaven who's going to be the mate for that person. And the Yerushalmi answers, Barachamim, that through tefillah a person could be destined to marry someone, and somebody else could come and daven and daven and daven. They want that shidduch, and they can get it through the tefillah, even from the Arboim Yom Kodem Yitziras Havlad. So the Tosfos in Avodah Zarah says that Mandi Amar that holds you could never change your mazel, it is not 100%. Because even that Mandi Amar holds that through a schus gadol, that's the lashon of Tosfos, that through the schus gadol you could change your mazel. And he doesn't say what the schus gadol is, but the Mefarshim say that it's talking about tzedakah to almonos and yesoimim. Not regular tzedakah, because even in tzedakah there's levels as big as tzedakah is, and I'm always telling you about tzedakah. That's the only mitzvah that it says mevi geula and tatzel mimoves. It doesn't say those lashonas by Shabbos or by tefillin or by even pidyon shvuyim. But by tzedakah it says it. Mevi geula and tatzel mimoves. So the Mefarshim say that even the Mandi Amar who holds you can never change your mazel, but there is one instance that you could change your mazel. And if you're able to give to almanos and to Yesoimim secretly or like at the highest level with no credit for yourself, then you could change your mazel also. But Avram Avinu's mazel was changed. So we see that mazel does have an important thing. The Gemara says that Rabbi Akiva, the astrologer, said to him that his daughter was going to die, and it was the day of her wedding. But she walked through a garden and the scorpion couldn't touch her because that morning, said Rabbi Akiva, she was saved because she put a pruta l'tzedakah, because she put the pruta in. But why did he even listen to this astrologer? I once spoke to you, there's a big machlokes between the Ramban and the Rambam about listening to an astrologer, and both hold it's absolutely osur. But there's a certain oifen that you could listen, and the Ramban and the Ramah paskins like the Ramban tzarech l'meichesh. If you heard it third party or something, but you're not allowed to go ask yourself or seek out the advice or the advance information from some astrologer somewhere, some sister Anne, and behind a curtain in the window of a store. So we're not allowed to. But we anyway have to do things with a cheshbon, and it was because of that change of mazel Avram Avinu. In other words, Hashem could have done it without the change. But he created the world with rules and regulations and direction, and before uprooting or turning over the apple cart, which he does all the time for people, in that case, he first wanted to do it like under the umbrella of the rules and regulations sent for this world. Now, we say in Meforshim that Avram Avinu was an unbelievable mashpia. And they were making left and right balei tshuva, to believe in one God, to believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But on the other hand, we call him Ivri. Vayaged la'Avraham ha'Ivri, that Og Melech HaBashan, Vayavo HaPolit. He came, and we know his intention was not to help anyone. He wanted to marry Sarah, who was exceedingly beautiful. And he was hoping that when the four kings, which is in our parsha, had the fight with the war, the Rav Nachman Bullman, Zachron Levracha, a member of my staff for many, many years, once called it, when I heard him speaking, the First World War, the four kings against the five. And the four kings won, and they took captive Lot, Avram Avinu's nephew, and Og Melech HaBashan said, do you know that your nephew was taken captive? That he was taken into captivity, hoping that Avram would go to save him, and he thought there was no way in the world he could save him. It's impossible. And that he'll be killed, and then he, Og, could go marry Sarah. The Medrash says it. And that was his kavanah. But we know that Avram Avinu, our pasuk says, he went with 318 men, or it was Eliezer, just Eliezer, because his name is Begematria 318. And they went and fought the war against 40,000, 60,000, 80,000 people. And we know that it was a complete miracle because Avram Avinu didn't take out a spear to kill anyone. That would have been an impossibility. But he picked up the sand and he threw it at them and it turned into spears. So he knocked off 1,000 and picked up more and another 10,000. And it was a miracle. Now, the question is, Avram Avinu was busy his whole life making Bali Tshuva. Was he, because Aver means standing opposite the whole world. The whole world was saying it's only idols, that this and that. And he took a position in opposition to everyone. And on the other hand, it tells us that he mingled more than everything and everyone of his generation in turning people into proper thinkers and believers. So was it Aver or was it Mashpia? So the answer is that is the essence of a Mashpia. Because a mashpia in influencing people, and this is a message to each and every one of us, that when we want to influence someone, we have to be unwavering. That means that doesn't mean arrogance, and that doesn't mean hostility, and it doesn't mean argumentative, but it means working with the people. And we even find that when Moshe Rabbeinu was told that his sons cannot become the next leader after his patir, it'll be Yehoshua. But Moshe Rabbeinu asked the Rabbanu Shalom, give me someone that can tolerate. Look at Rashi. She'ein doseim shavim zeh, that they don't have to be all the equal thinkers. Someone becomes a rav of a shul, and there's 100 people in the shul. You've got maybe 30 different opinions or 10 opinions different on any issue. And the rav has to be clear thinking, to be able to decide honestly what is the halacha. Not because the richest guy in the shul wants this and this, so how could I navigate to an answer that he will like? But to be able to have the schus to think clearly and not to be influenced by outside motive or ulterior gain in any which way. So Avram Avinu wasn't a stira. Oh, he was influencing thousands. But he was ivri. Because if the whole group he was talking to came up with opposition and it was not something HaKadosh Baruch Hu was happy with, so automatically he stood forth unwavering and unwilling. And that, by the way, is not just for a rov of 1,000 people. It's for each and every parent. We have to be consistent. We have to be loving. We can't, when a child does something wrong, embarrass them, humiliate them, exclude them. We have to, through the vehicle of love, get to the essence of their hearts and to be able to distinguish in their minds between what you as the parent see as right and wrong. And from that perspective, they may not be happy that moment, but when they think back later in life, they're going to appreciate every criticism even, and every admonishment, and every disciplinary action, because they'll realize at that point that it was for their good and the best for them. Now, when the war was over with the 4 kings and the 5 kings, and they grabbed Lot, so Avram Avinu came and saved Lot. And by the way, the Medrash says Lot was a tzaddik gomer. Where did he sour? When Avram Avinu went down to Mitzrayim, Lot went with him. And he was there for 90 days, Avram Avinu. And in those 90 days, Lot was hanging around 42nd Street with all the tumah, and he came back a changed person. And Rashi even says that when Avram Avinu said to him, listen, your shepherds and my shepherds are not getting along, we're going to have to split. You want to go right, I'll go left. You want to go left, I'll go right. But we can't stay together. And Lot came up and said that he wants to go to Sodom because the greener pastures and this reason, that. Rashi says all these reasons were just excuses. He heard that in Sodom was again the 42nd Street, and that's what he really wanted, and that's why he went there. That was his real, Rashi says it, that was his real intent. But meantime, he saved Lot, and the Melech Sodom said to Avram, listen, take all the people, take all the rechush, take all of the money and the everything. And Avram Avinu answered him and said, Im seroch na'al, im michut seroch na'al, from a thread to a shoelace, I will not take from you that you should ever be able to say, I'm the one that made Avram Avinu rich. Avram Avinu wanted that the world should know that the bracha comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and He alone is the director of activity of success and failure. But because he said that, and it was such a moment of test and temptation, the Gemara says he was zoicha to a whole listing of mitzvahs. Because he said chut, a thread, he was zoicha that Klal Yisrael should have the mitzvah of tzitzis, which is like a thread. He said seroch nal, shoelace. We were zoicha to the mitzvah of chalitza, the mitzvah of yibum. All of these mitzvahs because he made that one statement that Klal Yisrael was zoicha to. And not only that, because he said the word na'al, shoe, we were zoicha to aliyas haregel, that we walk with our shoes to Yerushalayim, the mitzvah of Klal Yisrael on the Sholosh Regolim, to be able to find themselves in Eretz Yisrael, in Yerushalayim. And not only that, but the Chut HaSikra, which was on the Mizbeach in between the top part where we put the blood, above the line, the Chut HaSikra, and under the line, that mitzvah we were zoichel to, that our Mizbeach, every day they brought korbanos, they had to adhere to that line of demarcation. Why? Because he said, imichut v'ad seroch nal. A whole list of mitzvahs that he was zoichet to from that one dibur. And we sometimes say something that makes an almona or a person who's downtrodden and downcast smile or laugh, that we don't know, as the Chazal describe what's going on in heaven, like thunder and lightning on behalf of this person, because of that smile that he brought to the face of the other person. On the other hand, Chas v'sholom, we could come up with a dibur that could work so badly against us that 20 years later we're still suffering from it. Now, so he made very clear he didn't want anything from the others. But he had 3 good friends that stood with him and by him. And their name was Oner, Eshkol, and Mamre. So he said to the king, he said, I don't want anything from you, but my friends that went, let them take what they want. So, what do we learn from that? When a person wants to be machmir on themselves, gesundheit, and even that has to be with careful, cautious consideration. Some people take on to fasting and it hurts their health. They don't sleep, they have to learn an extra 2 hours. People need sleep. And for someone who needs 7 hours or 8 hours sleep, to sleep 4 hours is not doing himself a favor, thinking he's being Mekadesh Shem Shamayim, or he's doing some big schus that he's going to. Basic health, a person, there's a same pasuk that says, Ushmartem es nafsho seichem. But if a person wants to be machmer in certain things, he doesn't want to eat the desserts, and he doesn't want the candy and the chocolate, fine. But if somebody else is a guest and you know he's looking forward to the dessert, make sure it's delicious and fresh and put it in front of him. And I never miss, Baruch Hashem, maybe I shouldn't even say it, but I always have a box of chocolates and a delicious dessert for my guests Shabbos, because many of them I see that they eat the desserts and the chocolates with a sumptuous delicacy attitude as much as they eat the brisket or the homemade gefilte fish or salmon. So we have to accommodate others and chumras leave for ourselves. And that goes for even discussion. You know, for somebody who has a guest that's a simple, regular person, and he davens 3 times a day with a minyan. Some days he gets to open a Gemara or a Chumash, and some days he doesn't. He's a simple guy. To say to him at the end of the Suda, well, I have to hurry up now and bench because I've got my Daf Yomi and I've got this. That guy never learned Daf Yomi in his life. What do you have to talk about Daf Yomi and show that you're a step or a tier higher up than what he is? So there have to be careful considerations in our hanhaga when we deal with ourselves and other people. Now, the pasuk says, "Vayorek es chanichov," that Avram, before he went to this battle, he prepared his crowd. So there's a machloikis in the Gemara whether or not. What do you mean vayorek? So Rav holds that he prepared them with divrei Torah, and he prepared them with chidushay Torah and divrei Torah, and that the schus HaTorah would carry the day going out against tens of thousands of an army, against his either Eliezer, Begematria 318, or just going out with 318 people, but either way, going out against an army of 40 or 50,000 was the same miracle. And like I said to you, he took the sand and it became spears, and the miracle happened. But Shmuel held that Hoyrikon, that Hoyrikon with diamonds, emeralds, rubies, all of this. So the question is, I mean, Rav, we understand, Divrei Torah is Megan, Umatzel, but why did Shmuel hold that that's what he did? And that's what he says actually happened. Because even though obviously these 318 people were tzaddikim gemurim, but they were still, the Meforshim say this, were still human beings. And when he saw that they would come and see the booty and the looting that they took, the spoils of war from them, that they may become overwhelmed with the emeralds and the rubies. So he wanted to take away even that possible test of the tzibur. So he gave them, before they left, they had a bushel basket of emeralds and rubies and diamonds and sapphires and onyx and all of these things, that there shouldn't even be a thirst or a draw when they see all the spoils of war when they come to them, which tells us that we do a lot of things in our life which Baruch Hashem are exalted. We come Rosh Hashanah, Rabbanu Shalom. There were so many days I missed the Daf Yomi. I'm not going to miss this upcoming year, and I'm taking on that the davening should be a lot better and should be a lot. But we have to realize that we're human, and we have to put up Gedorim to be able to not only say and want, but to be able to follow through. Because we are humans, and we should know, like the Gemara says, that there is no apotropos, there's no guarantees for anyone, no matter how holy or how high he may feel he is. Don't feel that you're above and beyond. Be realistic and avoid the temptations. Now, the Ger Rebbe says, the Bais Yisrael, that when Avram Avinu picked up his hands and he said, Chas v'sholom, I'm going to take from the Gashmi, from you, and you're going to be able to say, you made me rich, never's going to happen. But said the Bais Yisrael, when he picked up his hands, Harimoisi Yodi Lekeil Elyon, he was talking not to the king, he was talking to his fingers, to his hands. You should never be able to say that Koichi Va'oitzim Yodi put me into the position of wealth and prominence like I am because you did it for me. A reminder to every Gevir that sometimes it's a terrible test, and a regular person who everyone in this class thought he would never succeed, and he became the richest in the class. And he suddenly convinces himself, oh, I outsmarted and I out this and that. Says the Bais Yisrael, the Ger Rebbe, Zecher Tzadik V'Kodesh Levracha, Harimoisi Yodi Lekeil Elyon, my fingers will never be able to say Koichi V'Oitzim Yodi. Now we know that in the beginning of the Bible, V'Eschol L'Goy Godol, Zeh Ma She'omer Elokei Avram, Va'avorechecha, Zeh Ma She'omer Elokei Yitzchak, and V'Agadol Shemecha, that Yaakov Avinu, Zeh Ma She'omer Elokei Yaakov, Yochel, you may think that because we mention in the beginning of Shmoneh Esrei Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Yehei choismin bekulam, that you would be choisim at the end, Magen Avram, Yitzchak v'Yaakov, just like we opened the psicha of the first bracha, B'cha choismin. Now, the question asked by the Meforshim, what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu have to say to Avram? Avram was jealous, Mekana, that his son Yitzchak or Yaakov, his Einikel, would be at the end. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, oh, don't get scared. I'm not going to finish the first bracha with all three. Only you, B'cha choismin. So the Meforshim explained, the Mizritcha Maggid talks about it, and others, that the B'cha choismin means, you see, the Schus HaTorah is Yaakov Avinu, v'Yaakov Ishtam, Yoshev Oholim. And the Schus of Avodah, Vayetze Yitzchak L'suach Basoda, Tefillah, is Yitzchak. But the Schus HaChesed is Avram Avinu. And that as the Doros went down, could we say that we learned Torah like the Vilna Gaon 250 years ago? That at the end of the year before Rosh Hashanah, he was able to say, I made a cheshbon of 8 minutes that I lost in learning. He slept with his feet in cold water, not to fall asleep. Could we say that we're at that level of hasmada or learning Torah? So, and we can't. And the same thing with Tefillah. It says the Hasidim are Rishonim 9 hours. It took him to daven a Shachris an hour before and an hour after, and the actual hour of davening. Is our davening the same kavana, even with the 45 minutes or the hour that we put into the davening? But Chesed B'cha choismin, the Doros before Mashiach B'cha choismin. That's what he wasn't talking about. The Shmoneh Esrei. Avram Avinu would have been very proud to end the bracha Melech Ozer Moshiach Magen Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avraham Yitzchak and Yaakov. But he was talking about the Doros, the end of generation before Mashiach, that Yidden would not be embarrassed with the level of chesed, and you see all over the world the chesed that Klal Yisrael does for Yidden and for Tzibur, because it's needed and it's so necessary, that B'cha choismin, that will be the Siyum Hadoros, and that will be able to be proud and stolz when Mashiach comes, with the chesed that was done, and it was done like never before. Like never, ever before.